Hi there, and welcome to the Amy Kunkle Audio Hour. I am recording today's episode outside, so if you hear the birds chirping and the puppy playing in the background, that's actually happening. So if you also tune in on YouTube, you can see the video. The sun is rising behind me. I am in my exercise clothes because, as GaryVee says, you don't have to do your makeup and get all dolled up, which I really think only applies to men, but you can make your own judgment. So on today's episode, I'm going to be sharing what I call the GaryVee Effect, and also talking about Napoleon Hill's idea of sex energy or sex transmutation. So kind of a weird combination today, but I've really been inspired by a new project that I'm starting, and I feel like there's something of value, a nugget that you can take away as well. So why don't we get into today's episode? If you haven't picked up my book yet, Unbound Allegiance is available now on Amazon, and that's all for announcements. So let's talk about today's episode. In my book, I talk about the influence that Gary Vaynerchuk has had in my life and my business, and actually both, because the two are intertwined. And I share what I call the GaryVee Effect, and I'm gonna start with that because I think it's really important to understand our own internal motivation for achieving something. I think for myself, what it opened up was I needed an external stimulus, like a goal that I put out there and had something to reach for. I can also create my own goals and have that internal drive as well, but it helps me to say it out loud, to put it out there, to start talking about it in order to be able to really have that internal power to push myself. So in the book, Unbound Allegiance, I share how I met GaryVee because I won a podcast that he was giving away on his he has the GaryVee audio experience, and I didn't actually do the podcast. You'll read about that in the book. But when I started vlogging a couple of years ago, based on some things that he had said, some videos that I had watched of his, I learned so much about myself, and I talk about that in a different video. But when I won the podcast that he was giving away, it ignited in me this passion to just achieve something. I all of a sudden had all these ideas, all these things that I wanted to accomplish. I started vlogging like 20 hours a day. I mean, I was not sleeping because I would wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and I would have an idea and I would have to write it down or act on it or make a quick video so I didn't forget, or I would have to do something, and I just had all this energy like that was flowing in me. And I want to tie it back to what Napoleon Hill calls in his book as it's in his chapter called Sex Transmutation, but what it is he calls it this sex drive. I'm going to take sex out of it because that just makes it feel weird. But it is like the internal passion and drive. And he says, Napoleon Hill says, when harnessed and redirected along other lines, this motivating force is a powerful force and helps people to accomplish great things. And so it was funny when I read this book by Napoleon Hill. It was about the same time. I've read it several times. Think and Grow Rich is an amazing book that is not just about becoming rich. I mean, it integrates a lot of what I know now to be mindset shifts that you have to make in your life if you're really going to achieve something great. And so Napoleon Hill talks about it, and he says the emotion and this drive has the back of it possibility of 3 constructive potentialities. They are the perpetuation of mankind, obviously he's talking about sex there, the maintenance of health, and the transformation of mediocrity into genius. And that's the one that I want to focus on today, because it can ignite you to becoming something greater than you even know or understand when you have that passion to move forward. So I'm going to give one example from my life recently, and this is going to be a short episode because my puppy is in the back eating like my plant. So an example from my life is this week I have really fleshed out this idea that I have that I will be announcing soon. I've hinted at it in my Instagram and my Facebook stories. It has to do with Kickstarter, and I have just been absolutely on fire this week. And the past couple of nights, I have those moments where I'm laying in bed and the ideas are just exploding in my mind. I'm just thinking of new things, and that's leading me to think of other new things. And it reminded me of what I call in my book the GaryVee Effect. When Gary and his team reached out to me and said, hey, you're going to be on his podcast, let's schedule a time where you can come to New York. And I was like, holy crap. That was early May. We didn't schedule the actual supposed to happen podcast until the end of June, I want to say, and this was 2017. And so I literally had almost 2 months of absolute hustle, absolute, like, part of it was that idea that, you know, I was going to talk to Gary Vee, and he was going to be like, you know, what have you done? Like, how has vlogging changed your life? How have you been applying what I'm teaching? Like, I had no idea what he would even talk to me about, but I felt like this external pressure that was, you know, like Gary Vee himself was holding me accountable for what I was trying to accomplish. And at that time, I had just started vlogging about starting back up my architectural career. And it's kind of cool because this Kickstarter thing that I'm doing ties back into that. It ties into my awakening and looking at architecture differently. So I know I'm rambling because I'm so excited. But when Gary Vee said, hey, you're coming to New York, I've got 2 months where I was just hustling. It ignited that passion in me, and it was external. So I, you know, maybe it can be external for you. I know I got a lot of motivation during that time and over the past couple years from podcasts, from influencers that said, you know, you can do this. And I believed them, and I, you know, pushed forward because someone on a podcast said, I believe in you. And, you know, that's real. And I am proof that you can actually manifest things in your life that are real based on that exterior encouragement. So what's happened with me this week, I call it the GaryVee Effect because I am so excited by this new idea that I've kind of got in the works, and I feel like I have that momentum inside me. And Napoleon Hill called it, that drive or that desire. And if you take the connotation of the actual act of sex away from it, it is really just a passion that pushes you forward. And so I hope that, kind of what I'm telling you is giving you the idea of, holding something in your life that really excites you, really gets your passion going. And, for me, it's something that I created on my own. I did this when I was launching my book. I had to promote it and I had to talk about it myself. It wasn't like someone said, hey, you have a book contract, so you are obligated to do this. Like, I created that passion for myself when I wrote my book. I'm creating this passion and drive for myself by setting new, higher goals, by creating something that is way beyond my comfort zone and really feeling excited about it, and using that to really drive me forward and not in what feels like a grind, but really just seeing things unfold, taking aligned action towards those things, but really setting out the desire ahead of it, what it is that you want to accomplish ahead of it. Napoleon Hill talks a lot about saying your desire. Like, I've said for a year now that I'm going to be a New York Times bestselling author. I've said for a year now, since I taught this class on Think and Grow Rich, that I'm going to be a conscious architect making big changes in the world. And, those are the goals that I put out a little ways, and I'm doing smaller projects, doing things every day that excite me and get me towards that. But this Kickstarter for me has kind of caused what I call my GaryVee Effect, and it's really got me excited and really got me to taking action, reaching out, going beyond my comfort zone. And so I'm just passing that on to you today. Hopefully that's something that you can say, well, gosh, I just really don't have anything in my life right now that's exciting me. You can create it. I'm making this thing up, this Kickstarter thing. I'm just making that up. Like, that's never been done before. And I will tell you, my practice of quiet and meditation and making space has really allowed for that to be able to come through in my life. So I do have moments where I'm like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what the next thing is. And so I just live in today. I don't get too far in my head about what's next. And that really allows me to make that space. In my book, I talk about a huge component of an awakening or a shift in your life needs to be making that space in your mind. So taking the deep breaths a couple times a day, sitting quietly without a podcast in your ears, that has to, be something that you can integrate in your life. After I get done with this podcast and this video, I'm going to just sit outside in nature. And so I would just encourage you to do that. If you don't have your GaryVee trigger or your next big exciting project, then just sit with yourself in the quiet and the nature. Go for a nature walk, because we really connect to that stillness in ourselves when we're in nature. So I'm gonna wrap there. I know that this maybe has been a little bit all over the place, but I hope that you take from it to find something that drives you and let it drive you. Go with that flow, go with the excitement. And I just really hope that you are living the life that you were meant to live. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.